February 7, 1994 Observer Newsletter, Hogan to WCW Rumors, Mania X Lineup, Heenan WCW Debut, more by Observer Staff. Wrestling Observer Newsletter, P.O. Box 1228, Campbell, California 950091228. February 7, 1994. The rumor mill has been flying all week concerning the possibility of Hulk Hogan coming to World Championship Wrestling for a pay-per-view match with Ric Flair later this year. The story, which has been spread within WCW and is well known at this point throughout wrestling, is that a Flair-Hogan pay-per-view match will take place, probably during the summer. In addition, at the NATB convention, syndicated television convention, held this past week in Miami Beach, Hogan talked openly about returning to wrestling in May after filming of the 22 episodes of Thunder in Paradise, which debuts in late March in syndication in virtually every major market, is completed, and brought up Flair's name as the opponent he wants to wrestle. At this point, there is said to be no contractual deal between Hogan and WCW, and other WCW sources are exceedingly skeptical such a deal will ever take place. There is apparently serious consideration being given for Hogan to run on his own, most likely targeting Europe, where his recently released single cracked the pop charts top 40, as the place to run because it's considered the most fertile wrestling ground for a Hogan fan appreciation tour, a terminology that he bandied about at the NATB convention. Hogan has purchased his own World Championship belt, which seems to indicate promoting on his own, and there is talk of a Hogan show promoted along the likes of an Ice Capades tour loaded with special effects and including a pre-wrestling show rock concert with Hogan, Jimmy Hart and his backup band, in Europe and possibly the United States after that point. All this comes at the same time as the May trial date of his former boss, Vince McMahon, and the company that he was synonymous with for nearly a decade, Titan Sports. Hogan is reportedly a key government witness in the steroid case against McMahon and Titan, although most seem to believe him to be a reluctant witness, as in testifying against McMahon is something he personally didn't choose to do on his own volition. Reportedly, WCW does have an offer on the table to Hogan which would call for his receiving a percentage of any increase in pay-per-view sales from the current level, which, according to one source, could, if the Hogan-Flair match catches on, result in the biggest one-day payoff in the history of the business. With Flair now in a power position, the likelihood of this getting done has to increase, as Flair has always wanted to do a major Hogan-Flair pay-per-view series. While nobody will directly say so, there are many who believe the late 1991 series between the two, which drew very good but not excellent house show business, starting off at an excellent level but fading surprisingly fast, could have been promoted in a far more efficient manner, particularly since the houses were largely killed the moment Flair started appearing as a WWF television regular rather than the outsider challenging Hogan. If this was Japan, a Hogan-Flair series would be a guaranteed draw, but since this isn't, there are some question marks as if the time has passed. However, there is no match WCW could put on any time in 1994 that would do as good a business on pay-per-view as even a disappointing Hogan-Flair series, because Hogan still has the mainstream name appeal for a broader-based pay-per-view audience that nobody else in wrestling has. Coincidentally, Hogan's series is being taped at Disney Studios in Orlando, and next week WCW will be taping 4 months' worth of worldwide shows in the same location, in fact, in a studio next door. If Hogan doesn't appear for at least a cameo at the latest week's tapings, that would be a sign the deal is not nearly as imminent as some would like people to believe. If he does, it's a sign the deal is close to being a done deal. The biggest pay-per-view event of the year will be WrestleMania 10 on March 20th from Madison Square Garden. The makeup of the top matches was made clear on the live Monday Night Raw show on January 31st. Bret Hart will face Owen Hart, and Yokozuna defends the WWF title against Lex Luger. The final match on the show will be whomever wins the Yokozuna-Luger match defending the title against Bret Hart. A coin flip was held on Raw to determine whether Luger or Bret Hart would get the first title shot at Yokozuna, which Luger won. I hope none of you were gullible enough to believe it was actually a legit coin flip. It was also announced that both title matches would have special referees, and references were also made to celebrities appearing, and there has been talk of bringing back big names from the past for this show. In hindsight, the idea of a tie in the Rumble leading to the 2 title matches on the same show is a good one. This show's biggest draw is not any matches, but the name WrestleMania, as evidenced by the show selling out in just a few days, before any matches had even been announced. However, neither Yokozuna vs. Luger or Yokozuna vs. Hart on their own is a box office bonanza as a main event. Luger's popularity has cooled considerably since SummerSlam, and even that show, one of the most well-promoted cards in history, and with Luger riding a wave of publicity that should have but didn't make him the #1 name in the business, did a disappointing buy rate. While not as focused as a singular title main event, there is no title main event that is ready to knock them dead at the box office. Selling intrigue may hide the fact that neither match on their own is a killer at the box office. Yokozuna vs. Hart was billed as a co-headliner last year, but the real draw both live and on pay-per-view was Hulk Hogan's tag team match, and when they ran a rematch on free television before Survivor Series, the show didn't do a strong rating. Speaking of pay-per-view and major shows, Union of Wrestling Force International, UWFI, the World Wrestling Federation, and Mexico's AAA have begun openly talking about other major cards for later in the year. UWFI announced an 8-man single elimination tournament which will probably be billed as to crown the #1 real wrestler in the world or something approximating that. 2 first-round matches will take place each at Osaka Castle Hall on April 3rd and 4/18 at Tokyo Budokan Hall. The semifinal matches will be June 24th at Budokan Hall, and the championship match will be August 18th at Budokan Hall, which will also be promoted as the UWFI's 3rd anniversary show. The April 3rd card is scheduled for a 4/16 airing or the night before WCW's Spring Stampede pay-per-view on pay-per-view in the United States and Canada. According to several sources, the first UWFI pay-per-view show, which aired on October 5th, drew more buys than most of the WCW pay-per-view shows of this past year, although there are sources that would dispute that. The very fact Johan Promotions is going ahead with a second show indicates the first show probably did at least a decent number of buys, because UWFI has done no follow-up promotion or received any real exposure in this country since the first show, so there are no indications a second show would be any better. Whether the existence of the tournament will even be pushed in the United States, since Super Vader is considered the #2 draw behind Nobuhiko Takada in the tournament for Japan, but due to his WCW contract, his UWFI matches can't be broadcast into North America during that pay-per-view is unknown at this time, because doing so would almost tend to necessitate airing the June and August shows on pay-per-view as well. Takada, Vader, Salman Hashimov, and Gary Albright have already been announced as 4 of the wrestlers involved, and other names that have been speculated include Dennis Kozlowski, Kiyoshi Tamura, Masahito Kakiara, Kazuo Yamazaki, Naoki Sano, and Davey Boy Smith, who, along with Dynamite Kid, was Takada's hero when he was a ring boy for New Japan, so the idea of the current star facing his boyhood idol makes a good drawing storyline. Besides WrestleMania, Titan Sports also held a press conference on January 27th in Tokyo with J.J. Dillon and Akio Sato announcing officially the Japanese dates we had reported last week. The 4-city tour is being called Japan Mania, with the individual shows called Osaka Mania, Yokohama Mania, etc. While no lineups, ticket prices, days tickets go on sale. The arenas, which have already been reported here, or really anything of substance was announced other than the 4 dates: May 7 at the Yokohama Arena, May 8 at Nagoya Rainbow Hall, May 9 at Osaka Castle Hall, and May 11 at the Sapporo Nakajima Gym. Dillon announced the lineups would be put together specifically targeted for Japanese fans rather than just giving whatever matches are occurring at that point in the United States. It is expected that both Genichiro Tenryu and Atsushi Onita will appear on the shows to give them drawing cards for Japan. Of the current WWF crew, only The Undertaker has a significant following in Japan, but even that is limited to hardcore fans, and overall he's not even among the top 10 most popular foreign wrestlers according to recently released shoot polls. However, the tour has strong promotion behind it. Concert promoter Kyoto Tokyo, and the #1 network in the country, Fuji TV, which airs All Japan Women, as a sponsor, ensuring plenty of national television promotion. The idea of an annual WWF tour should at least sell some tickets as a novelty. Witness the tiny Michinoku Pro Wrestling's debut on February 4th at Korakuen Hall, selling out weeks in advance, although Japanese insiders are leery about the business prospects in an already overly fragmented wrestling marketplace. On the AAA television show that aired in the United States on January 30th, they made the first references to Triple Mania 2 on April 30th, with about 10 different locations announced as possibilities. Several major arenas and several soccer stadiums, 2 of which were in the United States: Madison Square Garden and the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. Actually, AAA President Antonio Pena wanted the show at MSG, but it is exceedingly unlikely that will be the case because AAA has no proven track record in New York, and booking that building 5 weeks after WrestleMania could wind up in AAA's biggest showing, potentially laying a major egg. Without a doubt the show would draw a lot of money in Los Angeles, but with a March 12th date already on the books, coming back that quickly for a Coliseum show may be pushing things. While Plaza de Toros in Mexico City, where last year's show sold out, drawing the largest gate ever in Mexico for wrestling, was also mentioned, it seems AAA is attempting to stay out of Mexico City, believing the city has been burned out because so many different cards are run there on a nightly basis. The most likely site is in Puebla, Mexico, a city about 90 minutes from Mexico City, which has a 55,000-seat outdoor stadium. WCW's January 27th Clash of the Champions, the WCW television debut of Bobby Heenan and the final show of the Dusty Rhodes era, turned out to be just another show. While thumbs down outrated thumbs ups by a significant margin, the show was almost completely uneventful with the exception of Heenan's role. Of all the people who have switched in recent years, the switch of Heenan as far as an on-camera personality is far and away the most significant. It was apparent that both his wit, and also his mainstream visibility and aura, coming so soon after his final WWF appearance are a huge plus for WCW. Heenan, who appeared up to speed for the most part when it came to angles and personalities of the wrestlers who hadn't been in the WWF, so totally outclassed the work of Jesse Ventura in the same position over the past 2 years that his work should have forced, giving him a spot as the so-called team broadcaster for the Saturday Night Show and for the clashes and PPVs in the future. Even though it wasn't the greatest job of his career, Tony Schiavone also needs to be praised just for doing the show, as he was seriously ill, to the point that Gordon Soley called 2 matches as something of a tryout with Heenan, and was suffering from a disc injury that is said to require surgery that will keep him off television for several weeks. The show drew 3,200 fans to the Centroplex in Baton Rouge, roughly half of which were paid. Ironically, it was 2 days later when WCW had its biggest house show success in more than 1 year, drawing 6,500 fans and $51,000 for a casino-sponsored card in Tupelo, Mississippi. The show was a success when it comes to ratings, drawing a 3.5 rating and a 5.1 share in 2,160,000 homes nationwide, which is significantly better than last year's January Clash did. It is roughly the same rating that Raw has drawn the past 3 weeks. Aside from Heenan, the show consisted of 6 matches, 4 of which were below average and only 1 of which, the main event, would be considered a good match. With the exception of an injury angle to Ric Flair, in which Flair's acting was good but it was almost identical to what already took place in November at Battle Bowl, nothing was done that had any relevance to the February 20th pay-per-view show, an event that received little emphasis during the show. In fact, the Clash seemed designed more to find a way to get the January 29th WCW Saturday Night Show rating to a 3.0+, than actually did a strong 2.9, rather than having anything to do with selling tickets to house show or future pay-per-view buys. 1. 2 Cold Scorpio and Marcus Bagwell beat Paul Orndorff and Paul Roma in 12:39 when the assassin gave Orndorff an object to put in his knee pad and Roma went to run Bagwell into the knee, but Bagwell reversed it and rammed Roma into the knee and got a pin. A 3-minute commercial break early in the match ruined the flow. It was a decent opener, but it's evident from their numerous meetings that Roma and Orndorff don't bring out the best in Scorpio and Bagwell. 1 3/4 stars. 2. Ron Simmons pinned Ice Train in 3:32. Since it went so short, they worked a fast-paced, clumsy match since Train is so green. Simmons has gotten noticeably smaller, which is a good sign. Train missed a tackle into the corner and was pinned with a schoolboy using the trunks. 1/2 of 1 star. 3. Steve Regal retained the WCW TV title going to a 15-minute draw with Dustin Rhodes. Much of the match consisted of stalling with Regal outside the ring looking at Sir William's watch, so they were teasing the draw almost from the start. A little too much in the way of stalling here. 1 1/4 stars. 4. In a non-title match, Max Payne and Cactus Jack beat Nasty Boys in 6:46 to earn the title match at the February 20th pay-per-view show. Payne took a nasty plastic chair shot and Jack did several of his patented bumps, but this was too short and kind of fell apart when Payne was in the ring since it appears fans don't care about him as a face. Finish saw Jack do a double-arm DDT on Knobbs, Sags dropped an elbow and reversed the 2, which teased the same finish as in many Nasty Boys wins, and Payne came in and did the same thing, reversing them. 1 1/2 star. 5. Brian Pillman pinned Colonel Rob Parker in 5:41 to force him to wear the chicken suit on television. The biggest joke was announcing Parker at 210 pounds, which I guess makes Pillman about 160. Steve Austin interfered freely until the Boss came out and the two chased each other around, and finally Boss chased Austin to the back, at which point Pillman got the pin with a schoolboy. For what it was, this was better than expected. 2 stars. 6. Ric Flair and Sting beat Vader and Rick Rude in an elimination tag team match in 22:27. Sting worked more than 90% of the match. Ring announcer Michael "I look perfect but don't have a clue what I'm saying" Buffer called Rude the WCW heavyweight champion in his ring intros. It's been said before, and will be said many times again, because Buffer is something of a celeb. As a gimmick once a year he's okay, but on every show, he exposes he doesn't follow what is going on and is clueless, and even though Gary Capetta isn't a celebrity, is a much better wrestling ring announcer. This match was nearly ruined by a 4-minute commercial break during the first fall. It shows no respect for the product when this is done because everyone knows in a real sporting event TBS would never take commercials in the middle of play. At 12 minutes Flair was in with Vader and Vader destroyed him with 2 superplexes, the second while standing on the top rope. Rude gave Sting a DDT. Vader went after Flair with a chair but new Commissioner Nick Bockwinkel made him stop, and somehow, unexplained, the fall ended with Flair and Vader both counted out. Flair was helped to the back the injury angle. Sting and Rude then went at it. It started with Rude's every match lengthy chinlock spot, but picked up including a reverse tombstone piledriver and Sting doing the Rude Awakening after blocking Rude's attempt. After reversing the tombstone, Sting won with a splash off the top rope. 3¼ stars. As mentioned last week, the Jerry Lawler case is continuing at least through February 23, when Judge Earl O'Bannon will rule on a motion filed by Lawler's attorney seeking an immediate dismissal of the charges against him citing outrageous government conduct. If the case isn't dismissed at that time, it is expected to go to trial on April 5. Unlike as was reported last week, it wasn't a logjam in the Jefferson County Court caused by the poor weather which delayed the case, but prosecutor Lisa Schweikert asking for a continuance for 1 month claiming she hadn't had ample time to review the motion asking for dismissal. The 19-page motion filed by Lawler's attorneys was in response to Schweikert's getting a search warrant to seize 3 tapes in the office of Lawler's original attorney, Brian Darling of Louisville. Lawler's attorneys claimed the tapes were privileged information which prosecutors weren't entitled to, and claimed the search warrant was obtained without probable cause by using a fraudulent and misleading affidavit. They also noted that Schweikert got the search warrant from a different judge than the one assigned to the case, and claimed Schweikert misled that judge into thinking the tapes contained evidence of a crime. The tapes in question, the key one being a phone conversation between Lawler and the mother of the 14-year-old alleged victim in the statutory rape case, took place in October, several weeks before the indictment was handed down. Lawler has claimed from the start that the indictment stemmed from a friend of the alleged victim confronting the girl and pressuring her into admitting she had sex with different men, approximately 5 of whom were named, one of which was Lawler. Since Lawler was the only one of the 5 charged, he claims that is evidence that this is only taking place because of his status as a local celebrity. He then went to the police with the information, and that is where the case came from. Unlike what was reported here, Lawler said there were no witnesses against him at the grand jury proceedings other than the detective who originally interviewed the girl. The girl, who Lawler said he's known for about 3 years as a Tuesday night regular at Louisville Gardens, later changed her story in a well-publicized affidavit presented to the court. However, the government refused to drop the case. Lawler also claims to have 12 to 14 affidavits from friends of the girl to whom she also denied having sex with Lawler that have been presented to Schweikert. Schweikert has all along refused to publicly comment on the case against Lawler itself, although both she and the judge who issued the order defended their actions in obtaining the search warrant this past week in a Louisville newspaper article, claiming it to be within the bounds of proper conduct. As several prosecutors have said publicly in recent days in reference to potential prosecution of Michael Jackson, that any case, without the testimony of the victim and without physical evidence, isn't going to get a conviction, which makes this case continuing at this point perplexing. The first public statements by Arnold Anderson in regard to the situation with Sid Vicious in Blackburn, England on October 26 were simply vague statements as part of a lawsuit filed by Anderson, Martin A. Lunda, and Sid Audi in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina Superior Court. The complaint stated that after the conclusion of the matches, which the complaint listed the card that night as being in Blackburn, England, but it was actually in Cardiff, Wales, Anderson, Vicious along with numerous other wrestlers and WCW officials returned to the hotel. During a conversation at the hotel with several individuals including Anderson, Vicious became verbally abusive toward Anderson and physically threatened him. WCW Director of Security Doug Dellinger interceded in the argument and escorted Anderson back to his hotel room. As Anderson and Dellinger were walking to Anderson's room, Vicious continued to verbally insult Anderson and make threats of physical violence. Shortly after returning to his room, Anderson heard Vicious beating and or kicking on the door to his hotel room. When Anderson went to the door to confront Vicious, he saw no one in the hallway. As Anderson stepped out into the hallway, Vicious, who had apparently been hiding behind the door as it opened, stepped out and violently struck Anderson in the head with the leg of a table or chair. Vicious then continued to viciously and intentionally assault and batter the defendant with the table leg and a pair of scissors. Vicious also repeatedly punched and kicked Anderson in the torso and head. After other individuals arrived, having been alerted by the sound of the assault, Vicious then fled the hotel. Anderson claimed he sustained serious physical injuries including but not limited to lacerations of the face and body, multiple contusions and acute pain and suffering. The complaint states the actions of the defendant were intentional, wanton, willful, and malicious, and were done with the intent to seriously injure or perhaps even kill the plaintiff. As it turns out, Atsushi Onita's first interpromotional main event will not be against Antonio Inoki, but on March 2 at Tokyo Sumo Hall against Genichiro Tenryu on a war show. It was reported in Tokyo Sports this past week that before the end of the year, Onita would have interpromotional singles matches against Tenryu Inoki and Yoshiaki Fujiwara. The belief is twofold. One is private and in public talk Onita has made concerning retirement, and he wants to go out with a bang, and second is the belief that the booming Japanese business with so many different companies doing big business at the same time can't last forever, particularly with the Japanese overall economy having taken a tumble over the past year. The stretch marks at the seams of the Japanese wrestling business are already beginning to be noted in the past few months. Crowds of less than 1,200 for the smaller groups at the formerly automatic sellout Korakuen Hall, and rings failing to come even close to selling out Budokan last week for its Battle Dimension Tournament final, or the second Fujinami Tenryu match at Sumo Hall coming nowhere close to a full house. The belief is inevitable the business can't continue at this level, so go for whatever big money match you can find in 1994 before the fall is so severe that the easy money matches even become hard money matches. The announcement of the Onita Tenryu match was made by WAR in Japan on January 31. Announcement of a February 1 press conference to officially announce that match to headline the Sumo Hall card, along with releasing the semifinal on that show as being Koji Kiao of Kiao Dojo in an interpromotional match against Koji Ishinriki, who out of nowhere was suddenly given a first name. That match means something because Kiao's initial fame came as a Yokozuna, sumo grand champion, and Ishinriki, while not the most successful of all the sumos, was a very popular sumo wrestler before getting into pro wrestling because of his heart and desire of being 5'9" and 210 pounds and facing men so much larger than him. Results: January 7, Arena Coliseo in Mexico City, EMLL, 2,500 Ponzonia and Baby Richard B. Pegaso in Ultimatum, Mestizo and Gran Apache Uno D. Reyes Velos and Escudero Rojo, Guerrero del Futuro and Guerrero Maya and Damian El Guerrero B. Triton and Filoso and Metallico, La Sombra and Ciclone Ramirez and Blue Demon Jr. B. Felino and Tornado Negro Uno and Cajos DQ La Fiera and El Brazo and Vampiro Casanova B. Mocho Cota and Mano Negra and Dr. Wagner Jr. January 9, El Toreo in Naucalpan, UWA, 2000, Linda Starr and Lady Magic B. La Gata and La Indomable DQ, Mohicano Dawson Taraco and Susperso B. Ray Richard and Mensajero de la Muerte and Mercenario, Scorpio Sr. and Luis Mariscal and Principe Maya B. Super Riton and Super Pinocchio and Black Shadow Doss, Rocky Santana and Babyface and Karloff Lagarde Jr. B. Blackman Doss and the King I and Celestial, The Killer and Zandokan Doss and Bucanero Jr. B. El Monarca and Enrique Vera and Super Astro. January 11, Arena Coliseo in Mexico City, EMLL, 4000, La Sirenita and Maria del Angel final survivors of Battle Royal to determine upcoming match for Mexican ladies title, non-title Moger and Titan and Espectro Jr. B. Los Brazos, Dr. Wagner Jr. and Gran Marcus Jr. and El Eo del Gladiador B. La Fiera and Dandy and Silver King DQ. January 12, Acapulco, EMLL, Brazugio B. Coral de Plata, Power Segura B. Angel Negro, El Rudo and Verico B. Caballeros del Ring I and Dos, Ludwig Star and Triton and Super Brasso B. El Cone Negro Jr. and Espectro Jr. and Archangel de la Muerte DQ, Bestia Salvaje and Emilio Charles Jr. B. Silver King and Dandy. January 12, Mount Pritchard, Australia, Main Event Promotions, Dazzler Dunlop B. The Fever, Jason the Maniac D. Skyhawk, Danny Burns B. Mark Mercedes, Billy Condolian and the Hitman B. Animal Harpus and Fijian Warrior. January 14, Tulancingo, Hidalgo, AAA 4,500 Sellout, Apollo and Ray Pirata B. El Vikingo and Troglodita Ninja Turtles I and Dos B. El Hijo del Diablo and Alito and Angel Mortal, Terremoto and Maramoto and Hecatombe B. Super Colo and Winners and Elvis 1 star, Pirata Morgan and Fishman B. Mascara Sagrada and Lizmark 2 stars, El Hijo del Santo and Octagon and Rey Mysterio Jr. B. Espanto Jr. and Psicosis and Jerry Estrada Core 3 and 1/2 stars. January 14, Arena Coliseo in Mexico City, EMLL, Platino and Olympico and Olympus B. Ponzonia and Ray Bucanero and Babe Richard, one-night tag team tournament for Arena Coliseo 94 Cup, first round Emilio Charles Jr. and Mano Negra B. Brazo de Plata and Ciclone Ramirez. Atlantis and Ringo Mendoza B. El Brazo and Fierro, Jacques Mate and Dr. Wagner Jr. B. Negro Casas and Mocho Cota, Cacho Mendoza and Bestia Salvaje B. Americo Rocca and Brazo de Oro. Semifinals Atlantis and R. Mendoza B. Negra and Charles Salvaje and C. Mendoza B. Mate and Wagner. Final Salvaje and C. Mendoza B. Atlantis and R. Mendoza DQ. January 14th Etalon, Australia Worldwide Wrestling, Peter McCormack B. Russian Roulette, Jason the Maniac B. Skyhawk, Dipey the Clown B. Jumpin' Joshua, Wayne Pickford B. McCormack, Lebanese Butcher and Kiss B. Ace Fenton and Dazzler Dunlop DQ. January 16th El Toreo in Naucalpan, UWA, 1250, Los Reyes Tapatíos Ian Dos and Gran Apache Dos B. Titaray and Mohicano Dos and Famoso Tigre Lobo Rubio and Principe Maya and Scorpio Jr. B. Blackman Dos and Shogun and Black Shadow Dos, Karloff Lagarde Jr. and Bucanero Jr. and Zandokan Dos B. the King I and Nuevo Aldos and Celestial, Babyface and Rocky Santana and Black Power Dos DDQ Luis Mariscal and El Engendro and Shu El Guerrero, Enrique Vera and The Killer and Yamato, Kim Duke, B. Dos Caras and Super Astro and El Monarca. January 19th Lagos de Moreno AAA 9500 sellout, Rey Mysterio Sr. and Rey Mysterio Jr. B. Jerry Estrada and Psicosis 3 3/4 stars, Conan El Barbaro and Heavy Metal and Pero Aguayo B. Pirata Morgan and Blue Panther and Fuerza Guerrera DQ 2.5 stars, Los Payasos BC and Cars and Mascara Año 2000 and Universo 2000 DQ 2 stars. January 20th Veracruz AAA 10,000 sellout, Gyro and Colorado B. Centurions I and Dos, Mascara de Sagrada and Octagon Cheeto and Micro Con and B. Espectrito and Dorito Estrada and La Parquita DQ 3 3/4 stars, Conan El Barbaro and Octagon and Mascara Sagrada BCN Cars and Fishman and Blue Panther 4 stars. January 21st Covington, Tennessee USWA, Mike Anthony D. Wolfie D., Don Bass B. Johnny West, Anthony and Ken Wayne B. PG-13, USWA title, Brian Christopher B. Bass. January 21st North Grosvenordale, Connecticut NEP 110, Joel Davis B. Jimmy Laser, Garfield Quinn D. Bob Evans, Robbie Ellis B. Sean Simons, Nick Steele B. Rick Fuller DQ Eclipse and Thrasher and Bruno Scarletti B. Big City Mike Rick Martello, and PJ Walker and Johnny Royal. January 22nd Red Wing, Minnesota, Vern Gagne Promotion, 700/free show, Steve Berg B. Randy Gust, Mike Enos B. Baron Von Raschke, Larry Zabishko B. Repo Man, Barry Darso, Brian Blair and Jim Brunzel B. Texas Hangman. January 23rd Bristol, Connecticut WWF, 900, Smoking Guns B. Black and Red Knight, Barry Horowitz and Steve Lombardi, Bastion Booger B. Jim Powers, Doink the Clown B. Bam Bam Bigelow, Head Shrinkers B. Men on Mission, Ladder Match for IC title, Razor Ramon B. Shawn Michaels 4 stars. January 24th Tokyo Oda Ward Gym, All Japan Women, 4,350 sellout, Captain's Fall Match, Numaki and Chikako Shiratori and Miki Yoko and Akako Abe B. Tomoko Watanabe and Ri Tamada and Kumiko Makawa and Okite, Suzuka Minami and Takako Inoue B. Saki Hasegawa and Kaoru Ito, Bull Nakano B. Kyoko Inoue 26-34 2 out of 3 falls WWA Tag Title, Manami Toyota and Toshio Yamada B. Atsuko Mita and Mima Shimoda 38-37, WWA Title, Asia Kong B. Yumiko Hata. January 24th Gamagori, All Japan, 1,800, Satoru Osako B. Brian Costello Chris and Mark Youngblood B. Mitsuo Momoda and Masao Inoue, Johnny Ace and Johnny Gunn B. Takao Mori and Mighty Inoue, Giant Baba and Rusher Kimura B. Haruka Eigen, and Masafuchi. Ryukaku Izumida B. Tamon Honda, Steve Williams and Richard Slinger B. Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton, Stan Hansen and John Norby Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala Das, Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao and Yoshinari Ogawa B. Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi and Jun Akiyama 24-55. January 24th Memphis, USWA, 1000, Todd Morton B. Ali Ben Khan, Mr. Clyde, Del Rios B. Reggie B. Fine, Skull Von Crush B. Jeff Gaylord, Wings Jr. title, Mike Anthony B. Coco or DQ, Moondogs B. PG-13, Ricky and Todd Morton B. Fine and Von Crush, Deathmatch, Eddie and Doug Gilbert B. Jerry Lawler and Brian Christopher. January 24th Tokyo Korakuen Hall, PWFG, 1400 Katsumi Yujuda B. Shoichi Funaki, Mark Ashford, Mark Starr, B. Minoru Tanaka, Jack Birthrighter B. Daisuke Ikeda, Yoshiaki Fujiwara B. Berto Duzel, Glenn Jacobs B. Yuki Ishikawa. January 24th Tampa, Florida Wrestling Alliance, AJ Andrews B. Zebra Kid, Manny Fernandez, Not Original B. Bill Payne, Haystacks Calhoun Jr. B. Sonny T. DQ, Jeff Bradley B. Frankie Rose, Randy Fuller and Jimmy Watts B. Surgeon Generals I and DOS. January 25th Gifu, All Japan, 3000, Mighty Inoue B. Tommy Rogers, Bobby Fulton B. Tamon Honda, Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Mamoto B. Ryukaku Izumida and Haruka Eigen, Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimaladas be Chris and Mark Youngblood, Jun Akiyama be Masao Inoue, Steve Williams and Richard Slinger be Johnny Ace and Johnny Gunn, Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi and Satoru Asako be Giant Baba and Masafuchi and Yoshinari Ogawa 2537, Stan Hansen and John Noor and Brian Costello be Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao and Takao Omori. January 26 Osaka, All Japan, 2050 Sellout, Mitsuo Momoto be Masao Inoue, Rusher Kimura and Mighty Inoue be Yoshinari Ogawa and Takao Omori, Satoru Asako be Tamon Honda, Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton be Chris and Mark Youngblood, Giant Baba and Haruka Eigen and Ryukaku Izumida be Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimaladas and Brian Costello, Kenta Kobashi be Masafuchi 2049, Stan Hansen and John Noor and Johnny Gunn be Steve Williams and Johnny Ace and Richard Slinger, Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao be Mitsuharu Misawa and Jun Akiyama. January 26 Toyohashi All Japan Women, Numiki be Chikako Shiratori, Bull Nakano and Suzuka Minami be Etsuko Mita and Mima Shimoda, Tashio Yamada be Tomoko Watanabe, Yumiko Hata and Manami Toyota be Asia Kong and Saki Hasegawa. January 27 Tokyo Korakuen Hall, Pro Wrestling Crusaders, 600 Haido Hideo Takayama, be the one Steringer, PWC Junior title, Hode Min be Kazu, Lumberjack match, Masahiko Takasugi be Kazuhiko Matsuzaki, Nail Barricade Death match, Power XI and DOS be Shunji Takano and Nobutaka Araya. January 28 New Haven, Connecticut WWF, Head Shrinkers be Smoking Guns 2.5 stars, IRSB PJ Walker Dud, Rick Martelker Atom Bomb 2 stars, Doink the Clown be Bam Bam Bigelow 2 stars, Falls Count Anywhere, Crush be Randy Savage Core, Lex Luger and Tatanka be Yokozuna and Quang. January 28 Monaca, Pennsylvania WWF, 800, Sparky Plug be Bastion Booger, Diesel be Bob Backlund, Rick Steiner be Johnny Polo, Jeff Jarrett be Jim Powers, IC title, Razor Ramon be Shawn Michaels. January 28 Tokyo Korakuen Hall, All Japan, 2100 Sellout, Johnny Gunn be Brian Costello, Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton be Masao Inoue and Yoshinari Ogawa, Takao Omori be Satoru Asako, Jun Akiyama be Tamon Honda, Haruka Eigen and Masafuchi and Ryukaku Izumida be Rusher Kimura and Mighty Inoue and Mitsuo Momoto 21 minutes. Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimaladas be Chris and Mark Youngblood, Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao and Giant Baba be Steve Williams and Johnny Ace and Richard Slinger, Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi be Stan Hansen and John Noor. January 28 Barberville, Kentucky, SMW, 750, Anthony Michaels be The Hornet, Bobby Blaze be Killer Kyle, Tracy Smothers be Chris Condito SMW tag title, Heavenly Bodies be Rock and Roll Express, SMW title, Dirty White Boy be Brian Lee DQ, Tammy Fitch be Dirty White Girl, White Boy 1 Royal Rumble Rules Battle Royal. January 28 Toyota All Japan Women, 1865, Miki Yoko be Okite, Kumiko Kawa be Ri Tamada, Handicap match, Asia Kong be Numiki and Chikako Shiratori, Suzuka Minami and Tashio Yamada be Etsuko Mita and Mima Shimoda, Kyoko Inoue be Tomoko Watanabe, Bull Nakano and Saki Hasegawa be Manami Toyota and Kaoru Ito. January 28 Taylor, Michigan, All-American Pro Wrestling, 400, Dan Severn be Shinobi, Al Snow Ivan Koloff be Junkyard Dog, Helmut Hessler be Death Dealer, Judge Dredd DDQ Vladimir Koloff, The Tasmaniac be Tommy Dreamer, Sabu be Snow 4 stars, Greg Valentine and Kevin Sullivan DDQ The Barbarian and Virgil, Jim Neidhart 1 Battle Royal. January 28 Chilliwack, BC, CWA, 264 Ole Olsen be Buddy Wayne, Velvet McIntyre be Iron Maiden DQ Timothy Flowers be The Mercenary, Michelle Starr, Mighty Quinn be Mike Roselli DQ, Moondog Moretti be Billy 2 Eagles. January 28 Lexington, Ohio SWA 450, Jimmy Lee be Max Profit, Bodacious be Rod Copina, Kid Collins be Frank Stiletto, Scott Summers be The Spoiler, Derek Stone and Lou Marconi be Thunder Morgan and Johnny Paradise. January 28 Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia TWA, Tracy Black and Dr. Feelgood be Jamie Strong and Mike Collins, Billy Montana and Terry Watkins be Big Tiny and Paul Waters, Bubba Humphrey be Ken Arden, Frankie Lee and Joel Travis be Rick Justice and Jesse Blade, Woody Woodchuck be Rawhead Rex, Johnny Blaze and Dan Marlowe be Texas Outlaws. January 28 Calgary, Canadian Rocky Mountain Wrestling, 100 Jamie Stringer be Chris Kramer, Steve Rivers be Katana, Jason Helton be Bob Austin, Ken Johnson be Eric Fries DQ Black Bart not from Texas, and Randy Rudd be Steve Wild and Dylan Powers, most falls within 30 minutes. Lance Storm b. Chris Jericho Corazon de Leon January 29th Boston WWF 4500 Head Shrinkers b. Smoking Guns 2 stars Adam Bomb Kerr Rick Martel Dud Owen Hart b. Scott Taylor 1 star Doink the Clown b. Bam Bam Bigelow 1 and 1/2 star Bret Hart b. IRS 2 3/4 stars Falls Count Anywhere Crush b. Randy Savage Core 1 3/4 stars Lex Luger and Tatanka b. Yokozuna and Quang 3/4 star. January 29th Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania WWF 1100 Sparky Plug b. Bastion Booger Jeff Jarrett b. Jim Powers WWF Tag Title Rick Steiner and Bob Backlund b. Quebecers DQ Diesel b. Backlund IC Title Razor Ramon b. Shawn Michaels. January 29th Tokyo Korakuen Hall All Japan 2100 Sellout Tomon Honda b. Brian Costello Satoru Asako and Masao Inoue b. Richard Slinger and Johnny Gunn Chris and Mark Youngblood b. Mighty Inoue and Yoshinari Ogawa Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Momota b. Ryukaku Izumida and Haruka Eigen Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala Das b. Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton Asunaro Cup Championship Match Jun Akiyama b. Takao Mori Stan Hansen and John Norby Steve Williams and Johnny Ace Giant Baba and Mitsuharu Masawa and Kenta Kobashi b. Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao and Masafuchi 3902. January 29th Morganton, North Carolina, SMW 300, Bobby Blaze b. Killer Kyle, Tracy Smothers b. Chris Condito 2-on-3 handicap match, Rock and Roll Express b. Heavenly Bodies and Jim Cornette, SMW title, Brian Lee b. Dirty White Boy 1 Battle Royal. January 29th Nashville, USWA, Del Rios b. JC Ice, Skull Von Crush b. Jeff Gaylord USWA Junior title, Danny Davis b. Tony Williams, Wings Junior title, Mike Anthony b. Todd Morton, Moondogs b. PG-13 Core Doug Gilbert and Wolfie D. b. Jerry Lawler and Brian Christopher. January 29th Namie, All Japan Women, 1380, Okite b. Ri Tamada Kumiko Makawa b. Akiko Abe, Tomoko Watanabe b. Chikako Shiratori, Bull Nakano and Numaki b. Minami Toyota and Suzuka Minami, Tashio Yamada b. Atsuko Mita, Yumiko Hara and Mima Shimoda and Kyoko Inoue b. Asia Kong and Saki Hasegawa and Kaoru Ito. January 29th Coldwater, Michigan, All-American Pro Wrestling, 475, High Flyer b. Mafia Moreno, Judge Dredd b. Mike Kelly, Hercules b. Tommy Starr, Dan Severn b. Shinobi, Jim Neidhart and Virgil b. the Barbarian and Steve Nixon, Hercules and Junkyard Dog b. Ivan and Vladimir Koloff DQ. January 29th Pleasantville, New Jersey, NWA, 100, Abuda Singh b. Ace Darling, Jimmy Shoulders b. Johnny Handsome, Super Jocks DDQ Spiders, Cousin Luke b. Tony Atlas DQ, Sabu b. Ray Odyssey, Tito Santana b. Doink the Clown, Matt Osborne January 29th Hamilton, Ohio, Worldwide Wrestling 1000, Lord Zoltan b. T.C. Reynolds, Psycho Mike and Damian b. Preston Steele and Rowdy 1 DQ, Medusa b. Candy Divine, Slammin' Sean b. Dave Blackheart, Kimala b. Preston Steele to win IWA title, Ron Garvin DDQ Greg Valentine, Damian 1 Battle Royal. January 29th Streeter, Illinois, Powerhouse Wrestling, 803 643 paid, The Beast b. Pretty Boy Floyd, Eric Freedom b. Ricky Yamamoto, Kevin Loudback b. Jason the Terrible, Reyes Tekka b. Karahe, Frankie DeFalco and Great Yojo b. Freedom and Mad Dog McCree, Apollo Baker b. State Trooper, Wave Riders b. Vladimir Romanov and Russian Assassin. January 29th Perry, Florida, Suncoast Wrestling Brian Armstrong b. Magnificent Pedro, Jim Hatcher b. Lolo, Johnny Rich b. Lord Humongous DQ, Scott Armstrong b. Mr. Tennessee, Larry Santo DQ, Stephen Scott Armstrong b. Tennessee and Boris Yukov. January 29th Vancouver, BC, Power Pro Wrestling, 49, Chi Chuck b. Zensu, Scott Braden b. Nick Randall, Stacy Jackson b. Awesome Annie, Bobby Hart b. Icon, Ivan Gorky b. Mike Edwards, Edwards 1 Battle Royal. January 29th Winnipeg West 4 Wrestling Association, 300 sellout / all freebies, Caveman Broda b. the Viper, Swiss Man of War DEQ the Sicko, Chief Johnny Saddlebags b. Steve Stryker, Bobby J b. Christian Hogg, Viper and Stryker b. Easy Rider and Broda, Chi Cruz and Marty Goldstein b. Brian Jewell and Stan Saxon. January 29th Springfield, Massachusetts, New England Pro Wrestling, 110, Forces of Evil b. Party Boys, Muhammad X b. PJ Walker, Scott Sharkey b. Sky King, Scott Taylor b. Steve Ramsey, Little Louie b. Irish Leprechaun, Jim Duggan b. Pat Garrett, Coco Ware b. Phil Apollo. January 29th Gore, Georgia, Powerhouse Wrestling Federation, Rick Blade b. Scott James, David Young b. Rick Justice, Blazing Fury Blade b. Red Angel, Dakota Outlaw b. County Kaz, Kenny D. b. Kelly Miller, Billy Montana and Ken Arden and Rick Justice DDQ Big Bubba and Young and Nighthawk. January 29th, Manhattan, New York, Bobby Bold Eagle Promoter, 60 Dream Warrior b. Fantastico, Inferno Kid b. Jackknife Johnny DQ Black Panther and Bandito b. Big Joe and White Star, Firehawk b. Rambo Johnny Blade b. The Tiger, Gino Caruso and Inferno Kid b. Ninja Force and Johnny. January 30th, Nassau Coliseum, Uniondale, New York, WWF 7500, Dieselker Tatanka 1/2 of 1 star, Johnny Polo b. Jim Powers Dud, Bret Hart b. IRS 2 stars, 2 of 3 Falls Rick Steiner and Randy Savage b. Yokozuna and Quang 3 stars, Owen Hart b. Marty Jannetty 2 stars, WWF Tag Title, Quebecers b. Men on Mission Dud, Coward waves the flag, Lex Luger b. Crush 1/2 of 1 star. January 30th, Tokyo Korakuen Hall, New Japan, 2000 Sellout, Shinjiro Otani b. Tatsuhito Takaiwa, Black Cat b. Yuji Nagata, Jushin Liger and Takayuki Dasuka and Akira Nagami b. Red Scorpion, Scorpio Jr. from UWA, and Max Moon, Tom Paul Diamond Boric and Wild Pegasus, Chris Benoit, Hitoshi Saito and Tatsutoshi Goto b. Norio Oniga and Hiro Saito, Scott Norton and Mike Enos b. Masachono and Manabu Nakanishi, Kunyaki Kobayashi and Kengo Kimura b. Osamu Kido and Satoshi Kojima, Hiroshi Hazi b. Michiyoshi Ohara, Riki Chashu and Tatsumi Fujinami b. Great Kabuki and Shiro Koshinaka, non-title, Shinya Hashimoto b. Rambo. January 30th, Kawashima, LLPW. Prelim results unavailable, Eagle Sawai b. Yukari Osawa, Shinobu Kandori and Norio Tadano b. Miki Handa and Yasha Kurenai. January 31st, Bushkill, Pennsylvania, WWF Monday Night Raw taping, 1600 sellout, non-squash results, Bret Hart b. Shawn Michaels, Doink the Clown b. Bam Bam Bigelow, IRS b. Marty Jannetty, Tatanka and Randy Savage and Lex Luger b. Quang and Yokozuna and Crush, Jannetty b. Johnny Polo, WWF title, Savage b. Yokozuna DQ. Special thanks to Mark Pecoraro, Ken Dunlop, Dan Paris, Brian Smith, Ray Gore, Buddy Phillips, Lou D'Angeli, Bob Koenig, Masayuki Osada, Chris Saviza, Frank Nemeth, Mad Jack, Brian Hildebrand, Steve Dr. Lucha Sims, John Lanigan, Karen Moore, Brian Lass, Stuart Kemp, Gene Restaino, Paul Adamovic, Norm Connors, Dan Riley, Adam Kane, Greg John, Micah Monsky, Eddie Goldman, Tony Sabaf, Jerry Lane, Todd McKenzie. Real name update and corrections. In the January 17th issue running down the major shows with the real names of the various performers, we have a few corrections. Devil Masami's real name is Masami Yoshida. Tenjin Masami, the name we listed, was her first ring name but not her real name. Sabu's real name is Terry Brunk. Terry Asar was also his first ring name. Dynamite Kansai, who we didn't have a real name for, is Chieko Suzuki. Terry Power is Terry Pak, not Terry Polk. Tarzan Goto is Masaji Goto, not Muninori Goto, which was also an early ring name. Toshio Yamada is her real name, not Toshinori Yamada, and Norio Oniga is his real name, not Nobuo Oniga. The correct spelling of Asia Kong's last name is Shishido, not Shishido. Other new real names are Riki Fuji, Masanori Morimura. Real names of the Michinoku Pro Wrestling Group include Sato, Shigeki Sato, Great Sasuke, Masanori Murakawa, Super Delphin, Hiro Wakita, Taka Michinoku, Takao Yoshida, Shiryu, Kazuhiro Kayashi, Grand Naniwa, Yoshikuni Kimura, Terry Boy, Takeo Otsuka, Yone Jinjin, Akiro Yonakawa, and Jinsei Shinzaki. Kensuke Shinzaki. EMLL/U.W.A. The new EMLL union called Sindicato del Consejo Mundial de Lucha Libre was started by Justiciero, a legit lawyer who was actually involved in starting the AAA union, Los Brazos, Blue Demon Jr., and Jacquemate. Pepe Mendieta, real name Luis Mendieta, one of Mexico's first heavyweight stars of the 50s, passed away on January 6. He's the father of current AAA wrestler Rambo. EMLL opens at Arena Mexico on February 11 with talk of peaking around April at the same time as Triple Mania. Anibal is still in a coma after a brain hemorrhage, which he's been in now for more than a month. Crowds for the UWA shows at El Torreo are dropping with Connect off the shows. On January 9, Enrique Vera turned heel on El Monarca and they continued their feud on top January 16, probably leading to a hair match down the line. A one-night tag tournament on January 14 at Arena Coliseo for the Arena Coliseo 94 Cup wound up with brother versus brother as Bestia Salvaje and Cacho Mendoza made the finals against Ringo Mendoza and Atlantis. Cacho oversold a headbutt to the groin from his brother for the DQ. All Japan. The latest tour ended on January 29 with a Korakuen Hall television taping show headlined by Mitsuharu Misawa and Kena Kobashi teaming with Giant Baba to beat Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao and Masa Fuchi in 39:02 when Kobashi pinned Fuchi. This tour, which was mainly smaller cities and mediocre crowds with only a few sellouts, featured Baba's return to main events after the intense crowd reactions for his teaming with Stan Hansen during the tag team tournament as the late replacement for the injured Ted DiBiase. Since Baba stepped down from the top years ago to work mid-card comedy matches, his being in with the new generation does have appeal, as evidenced by 2 of his matches finishing in the top 10 for Tag Team Match of the Year in Japanese polls. Baba also teamed with Fuchi, his usual rival, and Yoshinari Ogawa on January 25 in Gifu in a losing effort to Misawa and Kobashi and Satoru Asako, and teamed with regular opponents Ryukaku Izumida, who changed his first name from Ryuma, and Haruka Eigen in a comedy match on January 26 in Osaka beating Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala 2 and Brian Costello. Jun Akiyama, as expected, won all 6 of his matches in the round-robin portion of the Yasunaro Cup Young Wrestlers tournament. The surprise was that Takao Omori, who has only been wrestling a little more than 1 year, went 4-2 in the tournament for second place. They still had a first versus second championship match which Akiyama won, and no surprise since Akiyama has been a pushed wrestler since his debut match in September of 1992. The win puts Akiyama into the Champion Carnival Singles Tournament which takes place in March and April. It looks like John Noor will be returning as on the final night of the tour he teamed with Stan Hansen against regular Steve Williams and Johnny Ace, and it was Ace who did the job. Hansen and Noor only lost 2 matches on the tour, to the top native teams of Misawa and Kobashi and Kawada and Tao. Surprisingly, the January 23 television show popped a 4.8 rating with Hansen and Noor versus Kawada and Tao and Misawa versus Johnny Gunn on top. Surprising because the number was significantly up from what on paper had been much stronger matches every week. New Japan. The latest tour opened January 30 at Korakuen Hall with a battle of world champs with IWGP champ Shinya Hashimoto pinning CWA champ Rambo in 8:23. Neither title was at stake here. Masashi Aoyagi of the Skinheads group was the only pushed wrestler who didn't sign a new contract for this year, and he instead is forming his own promotion called Martial Arts Pro Wrestling with its debut show on February 18. So Aoyagi won't be wrestling on New Japan or War shows in the future. His protege Akitoshi Saito signed for another year with New Japan. Keiji Muto is out of action after getting his knee scoped in Minneapolis on January 10. The January 15 television show featuring Tiger Mask vs. Jushin Liger and Hashimoto defending against Masachono did a 5.9 rating. Rick Rude and Sting will appear on the May 1 Fukuoka Dome show. Liger is already making plans for the April top of the Super Junior tournament which he's in charge of putting together. Expect a lot of small promotion wrestlers such as Great Sasuke, Super Delphin, Jinsei Shinzaki and Riki Fuji to appear. Other Japanese notes. All Japan women sold out the Ota Ward Gym in Tokyo, 4,350, on January 24 for what was described as a hot show with superheat from start to finish. The sellout was considered a great sign since it was done without Akira Hokuto, who had been the group's biggest draw last year, and without any interpromotional matches. There was cause for concern because the advance sales were under 2,000 and the show wasn't really pushed that hard, but they got a huge walk-up. In the top 3 matches, Asia Kong retained her WWA title pinning Yumiko Hara in 1943, Manami Toyota and Toshio Yamada retained the WWA tag titles beating Etsuko Mitai and Mima Shimoda in a best-of-3 fall match that went over 38 minutes. Bull Nakano, who is being put back in the spotlight again due to the company being depleted when it comes to top names because of Hokuto being gone and all the injuries, pinning Kyoko Inoue in 26:34 in the other headline match. Hokuto is headed to EMLL, which Husband Talisman Jr. works for, to wrestle under a mask using the ring name Reina Fubuki, which translated into English means rainstorm. Top matches on the next major shows are February 7 in Osaka, Kong vs. Saki Hasegawa, Hara and Takako Inoue vs. Kyoko Inoue and Toyota, February 18 in Hakata, Toyota and Yamada vs. Hara and Kyoko, Kong and Nakano vs. Hasegawa and Kaoru Ito, February 27 at Korakuen Hall, Toyota and Yamada vs. Kong and Hasegawa, Hara and Takako vs. Kyoko and Ito, Nakano vs. Mita, and March 3 at Korakuen Hall, Kong and Toyota vs. Nakano and Kyoko, Yamada vs Hasegawa, Hara vs Takako. Michinoku Pro's first card at Korakuen Hall on February 4th headlined by Great Sasuke and Sato and Shiryu vs Jinsei Shinzaki and Grand Naniwa and Super Delphin sold out a few weeks in advance. MPW hasn't run a tour since December because it is a regional group that runs the northeastern part of Japan in which the roads are filled with snow, making travel difficult during the winter. Yukihiro Kanemura, one of the world's most psychotic wrestlers, returns to Wings on February 15th. He's been out of action for several months after getting horrible burns by taking a powerbomb onto a ring mat that was engulfed in flames. With Geto and Jado having quit to join War, it was imperative that Kanemura return, but Wings still looks to be in a rocky position. One of the craziest matches of all time took place on the Pro Wrestling Crusaders show on January 27th at Korakuen Hall before about 600 fans. The main event was a double barricade nails match, which means they had two barricades loaded with nails with the object to get your opponent in between the barricades and get them on both sides with the spiked nails. Nobuhiko Takada was married on January 30th in a ceremony that received much television news coverage with numerous celebrities in attendance. War is trying to break away from its image as being the minor league New Japan, and the cooperation between the groups will be limited this year. Tenryu will still work New Japan major shows, but few of the other War wrestlers will, and New Japan won't be sending as many of their wrestlers on War tours. In fact, with the exception of Super Strong Machine, who is actually a New Japan wrestler but as part of the storyline when the groups were working together joined War, there are no New Japan wrestlers on the upcoming tour. Tenryu is trying to build around new heels of the Sumo Army, 3X Sumos, and is bringing back ancient veterans Kim Duke and Masanobu Kurisu, plus recently acquired Geto and Jado who quit Wings. Koji Ishriki heads to EMLL from February 3rd until February 23rd and will be defending the UWA Middleweight Championship there. Speaking of Ishriki, this past weekend he got engaged to LLPW wrestler Otaku Hozumi, with a wedding planned over the summer, at which point it is expected Hozumi will retire from wrestling. There is also talk of Ultimo Dragon being unmasked shortly. He'll still wrestle as Ultimo Dragon in Mexico, and work under his real name Yoshihiro Asai and form a team with Koki Kitahara that will feud with Tenryu, Hiromichi Fuyuki, Ashura Hara, and Ishriki. War next tour is February 24th to March 2nd with Earthquake John Tena, King Haku, Rio Lord of the Jungle and Corazon de Leon, EMLL, soon to be SMW, booked. In addition, there will be one LLPW match on every card. Opening night at Korakuen Hall has Tenryu and Kitahara vs Fuyuki and Machine, Hara and Takashi Ishikawa and Kurisu vs Tenta and Haku and Duke, Masao Orihara vs Arashi, Ishinriki vs Dragon for UWA middleweight title, Rio vs Corazon de Leon, etc. Fujiwara appeared on a television special having a shoot match in Canada against an untamed bear, as opposed to the old tamed wrestling bears they used to use in pro wrestling in the 60s and 70s. His knowledge of submissions didn't help him as the bear destroyed him in rapid and dangerous order, and according to newspaper reports, the situation was momentarily scary. Onita is trying to book a few WWF wrestlers to appear on his May 5 Kawasaki Baseball Stadium show, and one would think in return for his working the War date that Tenryu or other War wrestlers would work the show as well. Weekly Pro Wrestling magazine came out with its awards, which are shoot awards voted by the readers, and were dominated by All Japan, New Japan, and All Japan Women. What was interesting is that despite the big gates the UWF-style offices, UWFI, rings, Pancrase, drew this past year, there was little acknowledgement of their wrestlers, which seems to indicate they draw a different crowd than the typical wrestling magazine buying mark. Ditto FMW, which was barely mentioned in the awards. Misawa was voted Grand Prix Wrestler Most Valuable, with 3,041 votes as opposed to 2,479 for Tenryu, followed by Hokuto, the highest I can ever recall a woman wrestler finishing, as in her heyday Chigusa would finish 7th or 8th, which shows just how much appeal the All Japan Women have gained over the past 2 years with the male hardcore magazine reading audience. Kobashi, Kawada, Takada, Hashimoto, Hazi, Chashu, and Onita. For New Wave Wrestler, Rising Star, it was Shinjiro Otani, 2,200, Kobashi, 2,183, Hikari Fukuoka, Candy Akutsu, Tiger Mask, Yashakuranai, Satoru Asako, Kawada, Hokuto, and Great Sasuke. As expected, Stan Hansen dominated in Most Popular Foreign Wrestler with 4,502 votes as compared with 1,849 for Hawk Warrior and 1,728 for Steve Williams. Remainder of the top 10 were Vader, Folk Han, Scott Norton, Hulk Hogan, Big Bubba, Wayne Shamrock, and Sabu. Men's singles match of the year was October 23 Kawada vs Kobashi, followed by September 29 Misawa vs Kawada, June 17 Tenryu vs Hashimoto, August 31 Kobashi vs Williams, which placed second in the Wrestling Observer Match of the Year balloting, December 5 Takada vs Vader, May 21 Kobashi vs Gordy, May 21 Misawa vs Hansen, January 4 Chashu vs Tenryu, March 27 Misawa vs Kawada, and February 28 Kawada vs Hansen. Men's tag match of the year was Misawa and Kobashi vs Kawada and Tao from June 1, 3205, barely beating out the same four on December 3, 3048. To show how dominant those two matches were, third place of Inoki and Fujinami vs Tenryu and Chashu from May 3 got only 624 votes. Remainder of top 10 were Muto and Hazi vs Chono and Hashimoto on November 4, Hansen and Baba vs Kawada and Tao on November 24, Hansen and Baba vs Kobashi and Misawa on November 30, Kawada and Tao vs Gordy and Williams, Hogan and Muta vs Hellraisers September 23, Hellraisers vs Steiners January 4, and Hellraisers vs Haku and Tenna June 17. Women's singles match of the year was Hokuto vs Shinobu Kandori from April 2 with 2,715 votes, or Double Kong vs Dynamite Kansai on August 25, followed by Hokuto vs Kandori December 6, Kong vs Megumi Kudo December 6, Hata vs Kansai April 2, Mayumi Ozaki vs Takako Inoue June 20, Devil Masami vs Nakano April 18, Toyota vs Fukuoka June 3, Toyota vs Yamada November 28, and Kandori vs Kyoko Inoue August 25. Women's tag match of the year was a surprise as the December 6 Toyota and Yamada vs Kansai and Ozaki, which will be eligible for next year's Observer Award, beat out the 1993 Observer Match of the Year between the same four from April 11 by an 1,887 to 1,003 margin. Rest of top 10 were Kyoko and Takako vs Ozaki and Cutie Suzuki on April 2, Kansai and Ozaki vs Hata and Takako June 3, which I thought was a boring match, Battle of 8 Queens September 31, Masami and Plum Marco vs Chigusa Nagio and Suzuki November 18, Kansai and Ozaki vs Hata and Takako January 15, Hokuto and Toyota vs Yamada and Kyoko December 10, Toyota and Yamada vs Combat Toyota and Kudo April 2, and Hokuto and Toyota vs Kong and Hasegawa. USWA. The tag title changed in a strange situation. The Bruise Brothers were scheduled to defend the titles against the Rock and Roll Express on January 24 in Memphis, however both Bruise Brothers and Robert Gibson all no-showed the card. It was announced at the card that the Rock and Roll Express had won the USWA tag belts from the Bruise Brothers in Morristown, Tennessee, fiction, but that Gibson had been injured during the match, so Ricky teamed with Todd Morton against Skull Von Crush and Reggie B. Fine. Bruise Brothers are already history, presumably over money. A real strange situation at the January 29 television show saw Bill Dundee, WCW's Sir William, show up and talk about the angle building up the January 31 main event, Jerry Lawler vs Eddie Gilbert, but also plugging the WCW show that night in Tupelo, Mississippi. It was almost bizarre seeing a WCW card plugged on a USWA telecast. PG-13 opened the television show challenging Rock and Roll Express for the belts, but then lost a TV match to Jeff Gaylord and Mike Anthony. Todd Morton and Tony Williams got a push as a lower card tag team. Chris Michaels, who was Morton's original partner as Far Too Wild managed by Burt Prentice, has already quit. PG-13 then attacked them and whipped them with straps. The Moondogs and now the two from Smoky Mountain without Richard Lee are babyfaces and beat PG-13 to become #1 contenders for the belts, and believe it or not they were billing Rock and Roll vs Moondogs on January 31 in Memphis as going to be a face versus face match. The January 24 main event saw Eddie and Doug Gilbert beat Lawler and Brian Christopher in a Texas death match that went 12 falls, ending when Doug put Christopher out with ether on a towel. Gilbert claims he perfected a new Japanese sleeper. January 31 Lawler vs Eddie main event is billed as a match for an old jacket. The storyline is that Sam Bass, who was Lawler's manager early in his career who passed away in a 1976 auto accident, had a jacket and that Lawler had one just like it. Lawler claimed that before he died, Tommy Gilbert stole Bass' jacket, which Eddie Gilbert now has. Eddie Gilbert claimed his father bought the jacket for $20 because Bass was an old drunk and needed his father to give him some money one night. Dundee was on the show claiming to have been there when Tommy Gilbert stole the jacket. Steve Austin and Steve Regal were both in the studio during the show, but neither appeared on camera. Reggie B. Fine, who every week on television challenges Lawler, this time brought in the Red Knight as his partner against Lawler and Christopher. The Gilberts jumped them and brawled for a while. As Burt Prentice was doing an interview, Skull Von Crush attacked him and Del Rios made the save, which led by Rios vs. Von Crush match ending when both Prentice and Bad Business Brown, New Hill manager, interfered. Apparently the March 7th Memphis card is going to be the biggest of the year, with talk that they are going to bring in as many as 50 old-time Memphis stars with a Slamboree-type show. January 29th card was Gaylord vs. Fine, Von Crush vs. Rios, PG-13 vs. Williams and Todd Morton in a strap-on-a-pole match, Danny Davis vs. Anthony in a USWA Junior title vs. Wings Junior title match, Kokoware vs. Dutch Mantle, Rock and Roll vs. Moondogs for USWA tag titles, Christopher vs. Doug and Lawler vs. Eddie, SMW. On the television that aired this weekend, Terry Funk did an interview with Dory and announced that Dory was coming to Knoxville for his February 13th match against Bob Armstrong. The Chris Condito-Louis Spicolli match, where Tammy Fitch interfered to give Condito the win, aired with the announcers speculating why Fitch helped Condito. The irony of this is that Spicolli was in town specifically to shoot publicity photos with Condito for their prospective Suicide Blondes tag team for the IWC. Fitch and Brian Lee continued to argue in interviews about the February 13th chain match because Fitch complained that she may get blood on one of her outfits. Dennis Corraluzzo did an interview from the courthouse in Pennsylvania trying to get proof that Tracy Smothers was really from Pennsylvania. Jim Cornette announced the injunction gimmick if either of the Rock and Roll Express touch him except in a regulation match, and then started saying that Ricky's father Paul was a drunk and the Faces had to hold Ricky back. The Furnace Brothers did an interview where they were spitting on a University of Alabama sweatshirt. The future of the Dirty White Girl Fitch feud is tenuous because of the legit heat between the two of them, which has been there from the start. They actually had something of a match on January 28th in Barberville, Kentucky. White Boy beat Lee via DQ in a match where if White Boy won, White Girl would get 5 minutes with Tammy. However, Tammy KO'd White Girl from behind and pinned her in seconds. Chris Jericho, Corazon de Leon, and Lance Storm will be in town this week having music videos done on them, but they won't be wrestling yet since Jericho has a war tour that ends March 2nd and all the paperwork when it comes to work permits, they are both Canadian citizens, hasn't been completed on Jericho. They used to team in Canada and Japan as Sudden Impact, but will probably be given a different name and gimmick as Cornette believes he has an idea that will rocket them into Memphis Fabs-like popularity. The two headlined on January 28th in Calgary on the local promotions card in a most falls within 30 minutes. Storm won 4-3. That was said to have been the best match in Calgary in a long time. Bo Alexander and U.S. male Curtis Thompson will be getting tryouts, and reportedly Tony Atlas is calling for work. It's well known Atlas was the original person Tammy Fitch was going to manage in a black man/white woman role, but Atlas canceled out just a few weeks before they were going to start the gimmick. On January 29th in Morganton, North Carolina, they did a battle royal with Daryl Morris, who was about 130 pounds, entered wearing a Jushin Liger outfit using the ring name Momota, after All Japan's Mitsuo Momota, the son of Rikido-san, who a few years back had a big cult following in Tokyo as Mr. 6:30 p.m. Expect the Prince Chorus, Rob Mays, character to be written out of the script at the television tapings this coming week. The character just didn't fit into the style they are trying to promote. Among the outside names that are scheduled for the March 10th Marietta, Georgia show, just outside Atlanta, are Lex Luger, IRS, Well Done, Jeff Jarrett, Steven Scott and Brian Armstrong, Ron Starr, 123 Kid and Ron Garvin. Here and there. The latest in the case on independent wrestling fiascos took place in Michigan over the weekend. As the story goes, a few months back Joe Lake ran a show in Michigan, and, after being held up, paid one of the wrestlers $1,000, $750 for the appearance and another $250 to do a job. The word got around there was a promoter named Joe Lake who was an easy mark, and all of a sudden all sorts of ex-WWFers were interested in working for him, and he put together shows on January 28th in Taylor, Michigan and January 29th in Coldwater, Michigan. Among the wrestlers booked for the shows were Junkyard Dog, Ivan Koloff, Jim Neidhart, Warlord, Barbarian, Honky Tonk Man, Virgil, Greg Valentine, Kevin Sullivan, Tasmaniac, Woman, Medusa, Sabu, Mike Awesome and more, which is quite a healthy lineup from an expense standpoint for an indie show. A few of the wrestlers, including Honky Tonk, Warlord and Awesome, apparently saw the fiasco coming when plane tickets never arrived, but Lake assured everyone they'd be reimbursed when they got there, and several used their frequent flyer miles to come in for the weekend. When they got there, the word was Lake's hotel payment wasn't good, so the wrestlers had to pay for their rooms. Lake wound up disappearing during the first show and never paid anyone, causing Medusa to scream on the TV soundtrack that was being recorded something to the effect of, "Joe Lake, you'd better get your ass out here or the wrestlers are gonna beat your ass." He never showed up the second night, so the out-of-town wrestlers had a meeting at the show and decided to split the after-expense gate, about $2,500, amongst themselves with the idea that the local wrestlers could find the guy since he's a local promoter and get the money due them, but the out-of-towners couldn't find the guy, which caused some of the local wrestlers not to work the show. Shannon Rose's cable TV show in Florida gave out the following awards for the Tampa-based indie wrestlers. Wrestler of the Year was Nasty Ned Brady, Tag Team of the Year was Southern Posse, Face of the Year was Cody Wade, Heel of the Year was Cuban Assassin, and Manager of the Year was Fantasy. Since there has been confusion about this, word we get is that the February 19th Woodbury, New Jersey show headlined by the first ever meeting of Sabu vs. Chris Benoit is still scheduled. Benoit finishes his current New Japan tour's Wild Pegasus on February 17th. Got a chance to finally see the past several weeks of ECW television. The Terry Funk-Shane Douglas 45-minute draw was a very good match that didn't lag on television, even though it was old style. As in old style, first several minutes Funk had Douglas in a headlock. Douglas worked over Funk's arm, which Funk even juiced, seemingly forever, etc. It was much better than anything on recent WWF or WCW big shows, and even though the crowd was so tiny it looked like the smallest of minor league promotions, the match built and had excellent heat at the end. Funk vs. Sabu was completely different. A total creative brawl with insane bumps from both men. Even though this is like stating the obvious, Funk, who turns 50 this year, is still one of the 5 or 6 best workers in the country. As for the TV itself, announcer Joey Styles reminds me of an early Jim Ross sans accent in that he does a great job of getting all the key points across, but is so intense for the entire hour that it's almost like he's banging you over the head with a hammer getting those points across. The interviews all have a Booker Paul E. Dangerously blueprint on them, loaded with fake shoot references like Kevin Sullivan building up his tag match against Pat Tanaka, talking about how when he wrestled in Florida that Pat's father, the late Duke Komika, who was part owner of the Florida office, used to short guys on payoffs and never give accurate house figures, and Tanaka saying that when the Sheik, his partner, came to Florida years ago that Sullivan left the territory. The production values and overall look of the show is minor league. The character development is great, of both established and new characters. Shane Douglas, nicknamed the franchise, is put over like a legit singles main eventer. Sabu is effectively a 1990s Jimmy Snuka, and Jason does Rick Martel better than Rick Martel. Overall, I thought the shows were good, although my one complaint is that there is too much repeated material each week, and interviewer Maddie in the house can only be watched with the fast forward button on. For example, the Funk Sabu match was great, but it seemed like the match aired 3 or 4 straight weeks on TV. It's obvious that during the last month there weren't enough matches taped for television to put together 1-hour weekly shows, as one show went more than 20 minutes of music videos, repeated highlights and interviews before you actually saw a match. Congrats to Dave Skolnick of Wrestling Perspective and wife Elise on the birth of first child Spencer on January 29th. An indie at the Agora in Cleveland on February 12th will be headlined by a tournament for a wrestling cup and appearances by Tommy Rich and Ivan Koloff. Phil Watson, son of legendary whipper Billy Watson, is planning on restarting his teen pro wrestling promotion in the summer. Currently he is promoting midget basketball games and running one-week wrestling training camps. Southern California indie wrestler James Iono, who had a WWF tryout early last year as the Volcano Kid, lost his home in the Los Angeles earthquake last year and is relocating to Utah. New England Pro Wrestling on March 4th in North Grosvenor, Connecticut, headlined by Robbie Ellis vs. Joel Davis and a tournament. Mike Anthony, a Michigan independent wrestler, not to be confused with the USWA wrestler using the same name, announced his retirement this past week after a 17-year career due to his inability to make a complete recovery from knee surgery. Former wrestler Jay the Alaskan York of Reseda, California was married in a wrestling ring at Slammer's Gym this past Saturday to longtime wrestling fan Lisa Matikaruk of Stockton, who was said to have been a fan of York's dating back to his heyday in the 50s. _A/IWC After nearly 2 months of erratic television, things got caught up to date this past weekend as Galavision aired 3 different house shows that took place between January 14th and January 20th from Tulancingo, Lagos de Moreno, and Veracruz, all of which drew hot sellout crowds with generally high-quality action on its 5 hours of weekend programming. The Veracruz card had one of the hottest crowds to see the group since the first Los Angeles show, as not only was the 10,000-seat arena sold out, but they showed shots of the windows and people were crawling all over one another outside the building to watch the matches through second-story windows. All these sellouts were in arenas the group rarely goes to, so they can be chalked up to rare appearances rather than specific matches, since they had the standard 6 mans on top in all 3 cities with no stiff matches. In Tulancingo they shot an angle where Pirata Morgan pinned Lizmark to win a tag match and then challenged for Lizmark's Mexican light heavyweight title. In Veracruz, in a hot midgets match, It wound up with Jurito Estrada issuing a challenge for Mascarita Sagrada's midget title after their respective teams fought to a DQ finish when Estrada was ruled as having fouled Sagrada. It seemed the biggest push was for heel ref Tirantes, as numerous falls were decided either by fouls or non-fouls that were called and wound up as DQ finishes. In fact, two matches that aired over the weekend, the midgets match, and the match from Lagos to Moreno where normal heels Los Hermanos Dinamita, Cien Caras and Mascara Año 2000 and Universo 2000, faced Los Payasos. The three clowns wound up with two of the three falls decided by either fouls or fake foul DQs. Since it was in the hometown of the Dinamita, they were heavily cheered and worked as faces, which was strange since on the same television show they aired the main event from Veracruz with Caras on the heel side in that show's main event. Caras, the group's heavyweight champ, submitted to Conan in the third fall, which makes the second time this has happened this year on television. Rey Mysterio Sr. was brought into team with Rey Mysterio Jr., who is his nephew, not son, against Psicosis and Jerry Estrada in Lagos de Moreno. Elvis turned babyface and formed a trio with Winners and Super Calo. However, the fans didn't go for him as when the heels claimed a foul low blow. That didn't happen behind the ref's back and the ref asked the crowd. Normally for a face they'll scream no foul, but in his case they screamed foul anyway. Particularly the teenagers seemed to hate him. WCW. Kevin Sullivan debuted at the January 31st television tapings for the Sunday main event show in Macon, Georgia. Sullivan formed as a tag team with the Equalizer, doing a gimmick where Equalizer is said to be Kevin's long-lost younger brother that when they were kids, Kevin used to regularly abuse, which is why he turned out so goofy. Although they were heels, they issued a challenge for the Nasty Boys. They also did a Sunday television feud between the Patriot and Steve Regal for the TV title. It almost sounds like deja vu because it was only a few weeks back they were calling Todd Champion the Patriot and doing an us versus them feud with Regal on Sunday. Frank Anderson, a Swedish wrestler who was an Olympic medalist in freestyle wrestling I believe in 1988, is training in Georgia. Anderson, who is something of a national hero in Sweden, originally trained with Brad Rheingans and worked a New Japan tour more than a year ago. The idea is to get him ready and give him a mega push for Europe, particularly Sweden. New Japan had the same idea about 2 years ago but for whatever reason, gave up on it. Overall, the first taping without Dusty Rhodes as booker was said to be pretty disorganized. Ted Turner is scheduled to do a live interview at the television show taped February 1st at Center Stage. WCW Worldwide starts in February on the 9 network in Australia, which precedes an eventual tour. Chris Cruz and Terry Taylor will be the announcers for Australia. The European Cup tournament during March in Germany will be a single elimination tournament with Ric Flair, Sting, Vader, Steve Austin, Rick Steamboat, Marcus Bagwell, Paul Roma, Too Cold Scorpio, Regal, Johnny B. Bad, Paul Orndorff, Harlem Heat, both members, Brian Pillman, Ron Simmons, and Taylor. Dan Crawford and Doug Furness were scheduled to have a meeting this week. It would likely take one hell of an offer to get them to give up Japan, but since they no longer work for UWA in Mexico, since the group can't afford to bring them in anymore because business is so bad even though they still hold the tag titles, they do have plenty of open dates between Japan tours. After the Clash they did a weird angle where new commissioner Nick Bockwinkel announced the Flair-Vader match would be postponed until April due to the injury at the Clash. Vader afterwards made some remarks to Flair's wife and ended up in a confrontation with Rick Steamboat, who Vader shoved down and both Steamboat and Flair had to be held back. The angle, lifted by Dusty straight out of Rocky III, was rushed to the point and I don't think the points got across. Unlike the WWF, they don't have any consistency in angle follow-through, because even though Bockwinkel announced Flair was injured and wouldn't be able to defend the title until April, Flair worked and defended the title at the house shows over the weekend and was being advertised for all the upcoming house shows throughout February. The Flair-Vader match is still headlining the pay-per-view and I'm told Flair will do an interview making that clear this coming week, but all that angle served to do was kill interest in a pay-per-view show that is 3 weeks away for 1 week because fans believe there is no main event. The Clash was the third highest rated show on cable of any kind last week. The Monday Night Raw 2 days earlier, which also did a 3.5 rating, was the second highest rated. WCW Saturday Night on January 21st did a 2.4 rating. Main Event did a 1.8 and Power Hour a 1.2. Sting was nearly seriously injured doing a boating scene on Thunder in Paradise, but wound up with just a minor head cut. Sting was in the first 2 shows in a heel role. They're looking at Philadelphia for a pay-per-view site later this year. Rhodes officially is entitled Senior Consultant, which basically means he has the same job Jim Crockett had. There is a lot of heat in certain circles since Rhodes was still at TV on January 31st. Rick Rude missed the weekend shows with a hyperextended elbow, but said to be not serious. Michael Hayes quit after being offered a $75,000 per year deal. Hayes also has a seriously injured back, so the entire Johnny B. Bad Hayes scenario on Worldwide will lead to nothing, and their match scheduled for the February 20th pay-per-view is out the window. Tony Schiavone has a disc problem in his back that is said to require surgery that will keep him out of action for at least a month. It looks as though Gordon Soley, who called 2 matches at the Clash, will be a temporary fill-in. Aaron Neville, who did an interview at the Clash, actually bought a ticket and nobody knew ahead of time he was there, so the interview was impromptu. It sure came off like nobody knew what to say as well. Steve Kieran looks to be coming in as a road agent. WCW is said to be introducing penalties for those who no-show at house shows, and Bill Shaw said in a Miami Herald interview that a policy will be implemented to tell the fans the truth at the arenas in the event of no-shows. That, telling the truth to fans, will be a revolutionary policy in the modern U.S. pro wrestling business. Shaw also said that the company is going to do a better job in enforcing that segments advertised and appearing on the 900 number are truthful. WWF. Highlights of the Monday Night Raw taping on January 31st in Bushkill, Pennsylvania were based around an IRS Marty Jannetty feud and the return of Earthquake. Earthquake showed up as a face making the save for Bret Hart as he was wrestling Shawn Michaels, and Diesel kept interfering. This probably won't air on television, but was simply done to ensure fans on television would know to cheer him when he came out for his live Raw match. Jannetty beat Johnny Polo in the live Raw main event match. 1-2-3 Kid, who was advertised all weekend for the match with Polo despite them knowing full well he was weeks away from being ready, was at ringside on crutches. IRS was at ringside as the guest commentator, and he and Jannetty got into it. While this was going on, Kid stole his briefcase and limped to the back. When IRS went to retrieve the briefcase, Razor Ramon threw it at him but had the gold chains which supposedly were being kept in the briefcase back around his neck. This set up IRS vs. Jannetty for February 7th Raw, which IRS won, although it winds up with Ramon and Quebecers and Polo in a post-match confrontation. A match tape for cable saw Dink interfere to allow Doink to beat Bigelow, which sets up mixed tag matches with Dink and Doink vs. Bigelow and Luna at house shows. A WCW-like storyline gaffe at the pay-per-view. Shawn Michaels left his belt in the ring and Razor Ramon left with both belts. At the house shows this week, Michaels was still wearing the belt. After all the 4-star ladder matches those two had at the house shows the past few weeks, they decided to make up for it in B-show main events that were said to be horrible. In Monaco, Pennsylvania, the two literally didn't lock up for 15 minutes, then went 2 minutes before Ramon got the pin in a match said to be negative stars. The next night in Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania, they only stalled for 6:48, but kept the match down to 12:24. Scott Steiner missed all the house shows this weekend, so Rick teamed with either Bob Backlund or Randy Savage, with the report being Scott was injured. Ludwig Borga suffered a broken ankle and is expected to be out of action about another 7 weeks. With Great Muta coming in as a WCW pay-per-view headliner, Titan has given Kwang a total Muta gimmick right down to the ring costume and green mist, but wearing a mask and billing him from Japan. Everyone back around 1986 thought this guy had potential, but he's turned into totally no talent. TNT. Mr. Perfect was contacted about returning for WrestleMania but thus far hasn't accepted the offer. Monday Night Raw on January 24th did a 3.5 rating, its second highest in history, while All American did a 1.9, shockingly low because of the Rumble confusion from the night before. Should have given it a much higher than usual number. However, Mania with the Rumble drawing did its best number to date, a 1.8. Heavenly Bodies are headed in for house shows in early March and are going to work as semi-regulars during the early part of the summer. Pre-WM house shows will be headlined by Owen Hart and IRS vs. Luger and Bret Hart, Doink and Dink vs. Bam Bam and Luna and Yokozuna, and Bastion Booger vs. Men on Mission. The day before Rumble, The Undertaker and Paul Bearer were on Regis and Kathy Lee, and when Undertaker was asked who beat him for the WWF title, Bearer responded, Ric Flair, showing that The Undertaker's spirit may live forever, but Paul Bearer's memory doesn't last very long. Rumble had several faux pas. Unlike what we reported last week, WWF did do a separate voiceover for the cities that got the Cindy shows on Sunday, after Rumble, as opposed to Saturday, still plugging Rumble. In the city we got a report from, which had a Sunday show, there was a snafu because they ran the Saturday version. On the Sunday version, they talked about 3 or 4 events that happened at the Rumble last night that actually didn't happen, most notable being them talking about what a great match Tatanka had with Borga. In New York on the MSG network, one of the shows aired at the same time as the Rumble pay-per-view and they did the Sunday version instead of Saturday, so Gorilla Monsoon was talking about the finish of the Rumble on television in New York just as the match itself was just starting. The readers' pages. Anthony Taylor of 9801 Willis, Michigan 48191 has 6 first-year WWF magazines to trade for tapes of Vader and Liger matches from Japan. Bill Donna of RD2 Box 480, Rockaway, Pennsylvania 15824 is looking for tapes of Paul Roma and Ricky Rice in boxing matches and a tape of the September 10th NWA Grand Slam 2. Ross Abrams of 9930 Wingtip Road, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania 19115 is looking for raw footage of SMW shows and any independent matches with Heavenly Bodies. Joe Fiore of 9 Highland Avenue, Nahant, Massachusetts 01908 wants to trade a tape of the Royal Rumble for recent editions of the Wrestling Observer. Charles Warburton of 233 Rensselaer Avenue, Staten Island, New York 10312 is looking for ECW and Memphis tapes and can trade anything in his collection in exchange. John Tavalacci of 47 to 29 49th Street, Woodside, New York 11377 has wrestling magazines from 70s through 90s for sale and old wrestling programs from Mid-South, NWA and WWF. Colin Spencer of P.O. Box 583, Provo, Utah 84603 is looking for USWA and ECW t-shirts and has tapes to trade in exchange. Richard Solimer of 21218 Wilder Avenue, Lakewood, California 90715 is looking for observers from November 22/93 to January 2, April 94 and for tapes of Dream Slam 1 and 2, Halloween Havoc 92 and Bash 92. Sean Orlanolo of 1700 NE 191st number 307, North Miami Beach, Florida 33179 has tapes from the 50s through 90s. Bob Sadwowski of 907A Palace Way, Richmond, Virginia 232335618 has video list for $5. Peter Ponzetti of 2211 Orchard Lake Drive, Fenton, Michigan 48430 puts out the newsletter Wrestling Ringside and Locker Room for $1 per issue. Ken Chance of 2101 Watts, Baker Avenue, Englewood, Colorado 80110 is looking for photos or information on Yukon Eric, Happy Humphrey, Haystacks Calhoun, Dick the Bruiser, The Crusher, Hercules Cortez, and Mad Dog Vachon. All former wrestlers, promoters, referees and their spouses from the old Gulf Coast circuit are invited to the Gulf Coast Wrestlers Reunion on March 4th to March 5th in Irvington, Alabama. For more info, call Bill Bowman at 904-479-3917. This event is not open to fans. Pat Hart of 1327 Watts, 84th number 1021, Denver, Colorado 80221 is looking for a tape of the All Japan Women's Major shows from August 25th, November 28th and December 6th. Scott Forensi of 150 Pierre PL Lima, Ohio 45805 is looking for tapes of Jerry Lawler from Memphis. A new Las Vegas promotion is looking for men and especially women wrestlers for regular casino shows in the near future. Please send resumes, photos and/or tapes to P.O. Box 34904, Las Vegas, Nevada 89133. Jay DeChellis of 32 Colonial Road, North Weymouth, Massachusetts 02191 will pick up merchandise, a live WrestleMania show for anyone who wants it but can't attend live. Rob Butcher of 17 Eastlands, Leyland, Lancashire PR53XS. England puts out the British-based newsletter Sucker Punch for $2 per issue in the US and £1 in the UK. One of the better newsletters around. Matt Lepovich of 566 Hurdle Avenue, Buffalo, New York 14207 is looking for pre-1984 North American tapes, particularly of Angelo Paffo's ICW, Mid-American Wrestling and NWF from Buffalo/Cleveland. Ross Burbage of 100 Pine Valley CT, Westminster, Maryland 21157 is looking for tapes of Jerry Lawler Bill Dundee hair matches. Ricky Short of Route 2 Box 297 Gretna, Virginia 24557 is looking for tapes of the December 4th WCW Worldwide and December 25th WWF Superstars show. John Belt of Route 1 Box 155, Elizabeth, West Virginia 26143 is looking for a tape of the January 1st and January 2nd Galavision Lucha Libre shows. Dan Weisberg of 244E, 60th Street #48 New York 10022 is looking for a tape of Dream Slam 1 and 2. Fred Hornby of 82 Highland Avenue, Port Washington, New York 11050 has a 160-page Argentina Rocka record book for $17, his revised Buddy Rogers record book for $15 and is working on a Gorgeous George record book and is looking for anyone who has contributions. Scott Green of P.O. Box 6162, Syracuse, New York 13217 is looking for a tape of the January 17th MSG show and can trade the Howard Stern pay-per-view in exchange. Royal Rumble. Thumbs down. Best was Hearts vs Quebecers. Worst was Undertaker vs Yokozuna. I had this as a thumbs in the middle before the Undertaker-Yokozuna match. This match destroyed the entire show. I realize wrestling is just entertainment, but this was a major league embarrassment. For the first time since I became a fan 18 years ago, I was ashamed that I was a wrestling fan. The Rumble itself sucked for the second year in a row. Why are they pushing Diesel? The ending, though a surprise, still sucked. Lex Luger is the next WWF champ? Kelly Crow. Brenton, Washington. Major thumbs up. I was there live in the heat in every match, except the opener, was tremendous. Forget the absurdity of the spirit of The Undertaker. The entire angle was well executed and the crowd loved every minute of it. It made up for the fiasco of the four doinks. WCW only wishes it had 1/10 the crowd heat. The best match was the Rumble. Unlike previous years, the WWF didn't bore us to death with a ring full of low-level guys. Bums like Backlund, Smoking Guns and Virgil were all dealt with quickly by Diesel, who was the fourth most over face behind Hart, Ramon, and Undertaker. The surprise ending was also a nice touch. After the Rumble, I can't wait for WrestleMania. Anthony Pierce. Pawtucket, Rhode Island. I watched the show and didn't get it. Was the show a recruiting film for Vince McMahon's new religious cult centering around the worship of the new god, The Undertaker? I prefer watching wrestling, so I gave it a thumbs down. After a year of the Japanese being insulted by the Yokozuna build-up, they send the WWF their biggest drawing card, Tenryu, to help Vince prove his point. What did Tenryu gain from the appearance? The WWF might have 4 wrestlers who would mean anything of value in Japan. It's what's known as bashing oneself. Steve Yohei. Montebello, California. Thumbs down. Awful show. If someone came to me and told me how to sabotage a pay-per-view, I'd list 4 or 5 things that happened on this show. If Lex is the one who gets the title shot, it should flop, and I think they know it deep down. Joseph Conrath Jr. Allentown, Pennsylvania. Strong thumbs up. I thought the Rumble was the best match. I didn't think any of the matches were that bad. The tag title match was excellent. Bigelow did an awesome moonsault in the opener, and the finish of the Undertaker match was great. I know some will be screaming, but angles are what wrestling is all about, and this one was unforgettable. And if we never have to listen to Paul Bearer again, it will have all been worthwhile. I thought it was the best pay-per-view show in a long, long time. Starrcade had a better main event, but this show was good from top to bottom. Lonnie McLeod. New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. Big thumbs down. While the wrestling wasn't that bad by WWF standards, I haven't seen a card booked so badly since Dusty Rhodes was putting Jim Crockett out of business in 1988. Let's start out with one of the worst heel turns in some time by Owen Hart. Then the audience was subjected to the worst and most ridiculous finish since the 2 Heckner finish. This was poorly done for several reasons. Where were all the faces? It made no sense. The least they could have done was have the heels lock the face dressing room door. It was overkill and ruined all the heels. Remember how well this angle worked with Papa Shango? You think Vince would have figured out ruining suspension of disbelief turns off the audience. We all know wrestling is a work, but there has to be some believability to it. The special effects told the audience, don't take any of this seriously. It is a Halloween costume show. The Rumble was semi-interesting and had a terrible finish that the audience was obviously upset with. Hart and Luger should have at least wrestled a few minutes before both going over. Most importantly, when people pay $24.95 for a pay-per-view, they expect to see a conclusion. The lack of conclusive finishes in the main events is one of the major things that ruined WCW. John Karish. Foster City, California.